A man gets his wedding rings in the post. No phone call, no conversation, just a package. In the mail, like a returned pair of shoes from ASOS. He'd been married 2 years. His wife was filming a TV show in Toronto, and one day, the rings turned up at his house in Los Angeles. That was it. Marriage over. That man was Trevor Engelson. And here's what he did next. Absolutely nothing. No press conference. No tears on a chat show sofa. No 6-part Netflix documentary about how devastated he was and how nobody in her family ever made him feel welcome. He said nothing. That was 2013. It is now 2026, 13 years later, and Trevor Engelson has still not said one public word about Meghan Markle. Now, here's the question I need you to sit with. Prince Harry has been with the same woman for 8 years. He left his country for her. He walked away from his military career for her. He torched every family relationship he had for her. And in that time, that same 8 years, he has produced an Oprah interview, a 6-episode Netflix documentary, a 416-page memoir, 2 Apple TV projects, multiple tearful television appearances, and enough magazine covers to wallpaper a small country. One man chose dignity. The other man chose a Spotify deal. And we're gonna talk about how that ended. Because by the time we get to the financial wreckage, the specific, documented, contractual wreckage, you'll understand why the people who once handed him $100 million are now privately using the phrase, "the lemon has been fully squeezed." The mainstream media frames this as a family feud, a sad story about a prince who wanted out. That's not what this is. Here's what people keep getting wrong. This isn't a soap opera. It isn't two sides of a family argument where reasonable people can disagree. The protection is gone. For decades, Harry had a machine around him. Palace lawyers, press officers, editors who sat on stories. A system that absorbed his mistakes, reframed his disasters, and sent him back out into the world with a clean image and a redemption narrative ready to go. That machine stopped. And without it, what you're actually looking at is a 41-year-old man with no UK home, no military titles, no functioning media business, no Hollywood allies, a federal legal question hanging over his immigration status, and an estrangement from his father, who has cancer, that shows no signs of resolution. This is the bill for a decade of decisions, and it arrived all at once. We're talking about Trevor Engelson today not because he's about to speak. He never does. That's the entire point. We're talking about him because his silence, 13 years of it, is the most brutal, most clinical critique of Prince Harry's choices that exists anywhere. And it didn't cost Trevor a single penny to deliver it. If you're here for the forensic breakdown, the court filings, the contradictions, the stuff that takes actual work to verify, subscribe now. We're under 1,000 subscribers. Small channel, 0 sponsors, nobody telling us what we can and can't say about the royals. Next week's video is the one I've been sitting on for 2 months. We're going deep on the ex-girlfriend Harry had right before Meghan, the one relationship the press stopped covering the moment the engagement was announced. We found the interviews she gave, we mapped the timeline, and the reason that breakup happened the way it did, it's the clearest warning sign that everyone around Harry chose to ignore. That one goes live next week, don't miss it. Right now, let's get into Revelation 1, the privacy contradiction, and I need you to see the actual numbers, because this isn't spin. So let's go through the documented record, piece by piece, because this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable for Harry. Revelation 1. He claimed privacy, then did 8 media projects. When Harry sat across from Oprah in March 2021, his core argument, the engine driving the whole thing, was privacy. He and Meghan left the royal family, he said, because of the intrusion, the media, the lack of control. Meghan backed him up. In an unaired clip released after the interview, she said, and I'm quoting directly here, "I've never talked about privacy. It's about boundaries. It's about respect." Right, let's count the boundaries. March 2021, the Oprah interview, 2 hours, prime time, 49.1 million viewers globally. That's not a boundary, that's a press launch. May 2021, The Me You Can't See, 5 episodes, a mental health documentary series, co-produced with the same Oprah who interviewed them 2 months earlier. December 2022, Harry and Meghan, 6 episodes, Netflix, 81 million viewing hours in the first 4 days. Netflix's most watched documentary debut ever. January 2023, Spare, 416 pages. 1.4 million copies sold on day 1. The fastest selling nonfiction book ever published in the UK, the US, and Canada simultaneously. That same month, 2 major television interviews. Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes, Tom Bradby on ITV. 8. Media. projects in 3 years. From two people who wanted to be left alone. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that can't be right. Surely someone pointed this out to them. Someone did. Bill Simmons. He's not a tabloid reporter. He's not a palace spokesperson. He's the Spotify executive who worked directly with Harry and Meghan on their podcast deal. He sat in the rooms. He was on the Zoom calls. In June 2023, after their partnership ended, he described them on his own public podcast with 2 words: fucking grifters. No legal challenge followed. And speaking of that Spotify deal ending, that's exactly where we're going next. Because the numbers on this one should make your jaw drop. Revelation 2, the $100 million brand that produced almost nothing. When Harry and Meghan left the royal family in 2020, the financial story was genuinely exciting. A $100 million Netflix deal, a $20 million Spotify podcast deal, a $40 million book deal with Penguin Random House. The beginning, apparently, of a billion-dollar media empire built on authenticity and truth-telling and the sheer global power of the most famous couple alive. That was the pitch. Here's what they delivered. The Spotify deal, signed in late 2020, worth approximately $20 million, ran for nearly 3 years. In those 3 years, Archwell Audio produced 1 podcast series. 1. Spotify expected significantly more. Sources inside the company told Variety that executives grew increasingly frustrated with the lack of output. And here's the detail that tells you everything about how these conversations were actually going inside those offices. Bill Simmons, that same executive, publicly revealed that he personally had to get on a Zoom call with Harry to help him brainstorm podcast ideas. Read that again. Take your time. A man who flew Apache attack helicopters in Afghanistan, served 10 years in the British Army, founded the Invictus Games, and was born into one of the oldest royal families in human history, needed a Spotify executive to help him think of podcast topics. It's like hiring the world's most famous chef and discovering he can't find the kitchen. The deal ended in June 2023, 3 years early. Netflix wasn't much better. The flagship Harry and Meghan documentary was a genuine hit. But what came after? An animated children's series called Pearl, canceled. At least 2 other television pitches, rejected without being greenlit. Live to Lead, their second Netflix project, failed to break into the platform's top 10 chart. Sources speaking to the Wall Street Journal and The Sun were blunt. The feeling is that the lemon has been fully squeezed. The deal wasn't renewed in 2025. And here's the absurdity, because there's always an absurdity with Harry. He spent years attacking the institution that made him one of the most recognizable people on earth, and then discovered that without that institution, the commercial market wasn't particularly interested in what he had to say about anything else. It's like burning down your family's restaurant and then being shocked that the food delivery app isn't taking off. The brand had one story. They told it. It's done. But the commercial collapse, as damaging as it is not the sharpest consequence of the decisions Harry made. That would be what happened to his house, the morning after his book came out. Revelation 3. The eviction notice arrived 1 day late. January 9th, 2023. That is the date King Charles began the formal process of evicting Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from Frogmore Cottage. January 10th, 2023 was the day Spare went on sale, 1 day apart. Frogmore Cottage was a gift. Queen Elizabeth gave it to them after the wedding in 2018. British taxpayers funded a £2.4 million renovation before they moved in. Harry described it in Spare with genuine emotion. His words, "Once upon a time, this was going to be my forever home." He wrote those words in the same book that cost him the house. Look at the date on that eviction notice, January 9th, 1 day before the book launch. That's not coincidence, that's a response. By March 2023, it was confirmed publicly. The palace spokesperson issued a statement with the kind of bluntness that's usually reserved for people the palace has completely finished with. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been requested to vacate their residence at Frogmore Cottage. That's the whole statement. No warmth, no diplomatic softening, requested to vacate. Pack your things. By June 2023, done. Belongings shipped to California, keys returned, over. And here's what nobody talks about enough. Harry frames the loss of Frogmore as something cruel that was done to him, something taken, something he's grieving. But Frogmore sat largely unused from 2020 to 2023 while he was living in a $14 million mansion in Montecito. He'd already left. He just wanted to keep the option of going back. He wrote a book attacking the people who still had the keys, and then seemed shocked they kept them. It's like quitting your job, moving abroad, and then complaining that they gave your desk to someone else. But losing his home isn't the most legally exposed thing Harry did in that book. What he put on pages 112 and 113, that's the revelation that his own lawyers still can't make go away. And if you think the eviction was bad, what's coming next is the bit his immigration attorney is losing sleep over. Revelation 4. He admitted it in writing, for money. Pages 112 and 113 of Spare. No publicist approved this. No lawyer advised it. No rational person building a life in a foreign country would have voluntarily written it down and sold it to 50 countries simultaneously. Harry describes his first experience with cocaine. He was 17 years old. Country house. Shooting weekend. Offered a line. His exact words: "I was a 17-year-old willing to try almost anything that would alter the pre-established order." There's also cannabis. Age 16. At Eton College and at Kensington Palace. There's magic mushrooms. Age 31. At a party in California, at Courtney Cox's house specifically, consumed from a box of black diamond mushroom chocolates. And there's ayahuasca, used for what he calls therapeutic purposes. He published all of it in a book for $40 million. Now, here's where it stops being a celebrity gossip story and starts being a legal problem. U.S. immigration law is not subtle on this question. Drug use, not trafficking, not dealing, just past use, is listed as grounds for visa denial. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, surely he disclosed it. We don't know. That's the problem. The Heritage Foundation, a Washington-based think tank, filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security specifically to access Harry's visa application. Their argument was simple, almost insultingly simple. A man publicly admitted in a best-selling book sold for profit to using cocaine, cannabis, magic mushrooms, and ayahuasca. The legal question is obvious. Did he tell the US government about any of that when he applied to live here? The DHS fought to keep the records hidden. A federal judge reviewed them in private. September 2024, the case was closed. The judge ruled Harry's right to privacy outweighs the public interest. The documents remain sealed, so we still don't know if he disclosed his drug history on his visa application. We know he admitted to it in print. We know his visa documents are locked away. And we know, this is not speculation, this is immigration law, that concealing drug use on a visa application is grounds for deportation. It's like confessing to shoplifting in your autobiography and then fighting to hide your store security footage. The Heritage Foundation is still pushing to reopen the case. There are serious questions about whether the current administration views Harry's privacy interests the same way the previous one did. Harry published his drug use to tell his truth, and that truth is now sitting at the intersection of immigration law and presidential politics. He didn't see that coming. Nobody around him told him it would. Revelation 5. Everybody else just got on with it. Now, back to Trevor, because I need you to understand something. This isn't really a story about Trevor Engelson. Trevor Engelson is a lens. He's a lens through which Harry's behavior looks worse with every single fact we've just covered. Chelsea Davy dated Prince Harry from 2004 to 2011. 7 years. He carved their names into a tree on her family's estate. He believed, according to royal biographer Katie Nicholl, that he was going to be with Chelsea forever. They broke up. Chelsea didn't want royal life. She moved on. 15 years since that split. Not one interview, not one comment. She was at Harry's wedding to Meghan in 2018, and she sat there and smiled from a pew. She now runs a jewelry brand and a travel company. She's married with 3 children. Total interviews about Harry? 0. Cressida bonus. Dated Harry from 2012 to 2014. 2 years. According to Nicholl, who interviewed people close to her, Cressida simply didn't love him enough. She wanted to be an actress. She hated being defined as Prince Harry's girlfriend. She walked. Also at the 2018 wedding. Also silent. Also built her own career. 12 years since that relationship ended. Total interviews about Harry? 0. Then there's Trevor. 2 years of marriage. Wedding rings returned through the post. No explanation. 13 years since the divorce. Total interviews? 0. Total memoirs? 0. Total Netflix documentaries? 0. The only thing ever publicly attributed to Trevor Engelson in 13 years came via Bethany Frankel on her podcast in November 2025. Frankel said she briefly dated Trevor in 2016, the same year Harry and Meghan started seeing each other. She told Trevor who Harry's new girlfriend was. Trevor's response was 2 words: she'll close. He knew immediately, and he still said nothing. Here's the bit they all missed. 3 different people, 7 years, 2 years, 2 years, combined 11 years of relationships with Harry and Meghan respectively. All 3 walked away. All 3 rebuilt their lives. All 3 attended the wedding and wished them well. None of them wrote a book about it. That is what moving on actually looks like. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't appear on a chat show in a cashmere sweater to explain what it went through. It works. It builds. It moves. There's a quieter part of this story, and I need you to slow down with me for a second. Because underneath all the contracts and the visa questions and the evictions, There's a human cost to what Harry chose. Harry served 10 years in the British military. Real service. 2 tours in Afghanistan. He flew Apache attack helicopters in active combat. He wasn't decorative. He wasn't there for the photo opportunity. He was there. And when he left the royal family, he lost his honorary military appointments. All 3 of them. Captain General of the Royal Marines, inherited from his grandfather, Prince Philip, in December 2017. Honorary Air Commandant of RAF Honington, Commodore-in-Chief of Small Ships and Diving, gone. February 2021. Royal biographer Robert Jobson said Harry hates it, that he hates the idea that he is not Captain General of the Royal Marines, that if he'd stayed, he'd have been hugely beneficial to the country. And that's the part that actually stings, because there's a version of Harry's life that exists without any of this. A version where the genuine service he gave, the genuine connection he built with the veterans community, the genuine good that Invictus has done for wounded soldiers, where all of that exists without the Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, the memoir, a version where Harry is still Captain General of the Royal Marines, still visiting regiments, still doing the work that the military actually wanted him to do. He cannot wear his uniform at military events anymore. His connection to the armed forces, the part of his life that was real, that was earned, that nobody could take credit for or question, is now filtered through a production company that a Spotify executive called a grift. Nobody asked the veterans how they felt about that. They never do. Let's put actual numbers to what this cost. Not emotionally, financially, legally, permanently. 3 military titles, gone. Not suspended, not on pause, gone. Frogmore Cottage, gone. Evicted 1 day after the book launch. Belongings shipped to California by June 2023. The last UK home he'll ever have. The Spotify deal, $20 million, nearly 3 years. 1 podcast series delivered, ended 3 years early. Senior executive publicly called them grifters. No legal challenge was filed. Netflix, a reported $100 million. 1 genuine hit, 1 project that flopped. Multiple projects canceled or rejected. Deal not renewed in 2025. The lemon has been fully squeezed. That quote came from inside Netflix, from people who paid for the lemon. The book deal, $40 million, legitimately earned. Spare is a genuinely successful book. It also triggered the Frogmore eviction. It deepened the estrangement from his brother and his father, who has cancer. And it produced a documented admission of illegal drug use across multiple countries that is currently the subject of active federal legal proceedings about whether he was ever entitled to live in America at all. That's the deal he made. $40 million in book earnings. Cost, 1 UK residence, 3 military titles, 2 commercial partnerships worth $120 million, all functional Hollywood relationships, and, still unresolved, the right to stay in California. The Heritage Foundation court filing said it best, and I want you to hear this language because it's devastating in its precision. They wrote that the case arose because His Royal Highness voluntarily and for immense profit admitted in writing to the elements of any number of controlled substance violations. He published his drug use for money in a memoir, and that memoir is now Exhibit A in a federal case about whether he was ever legally allowed to be here. It's like confessing to every crime you've ever committed in a best-selling autobiography and then arguing that your right to privacy means the police can't read it. The math doesn't work. It never did, and nobody around him apparently noticed until it was in print in 53 countries. Here's where we land. Trevor Engelson never told his story. He didn't need to, because his silence, 13 clean, productive, undramatic years of it, is the story. It tells us exactly what it looks like when a man takes a painful experience and does something constructive with it instead of a press tour. Prince Harry is 41 years old. No home in the country where he was born. No military titles despite a decade of genuine service that earned them. No functioning media business despite $160 million in headline deals. No visible path back to his brother. No confirmed relationship with his father, who is ill and who reportedly has no time in the diary when Harry visits the UK. A visa legal question that isn't fully resolved. And a legacy that currently consists of 1 hit documentary, 1 record-breaking book, and 1 Spotify executive's 2-word verdict. And the man who divorced his wife? Trevor Engelson is fine. He's been fine since 2013. He didn't need Oprah. He didn't need Netflix. He didn't need 416 pages of memoir to explain what happened to him or why he deserved better. He did what adults do when things fall apart. He got up, he worked, he moved on. Chelsea did it, Cressida did it, Trevor did it. There's a version of this story where Harry does the same thing, where he stops talking, stops performing grief for cameras and calling it healing, stops explaining and justifying and relitigating, where he quietly, without a press release, without a Netflix deal, without a 6-part documentary about the process, just builds something real. But every single month that passes without that version appearing tells us something important. Either he can't do it, or he doesn't know how. Or, and this is the version that should make you deeply uncomfortable, he's surrounded by people whose income depends on him never doing it. And until something changes, the most devastating critique of everything Prince Harry has chosen is not going to come from a journalist. It's not going to come from a palace statement. It's not going to come from a federal court ruling. It's going to keep coming from a man in Los Angeles who has been saying absolutely nothing for 13 years. Here's what I want you to leave in the comments. If Trevor Engelson sat down tomorrow, not for a memoir, not for Netflix, just one honest interview, what is the single question you believe Harry is most terrified to have answered? Not about Meghan, about himself. Because that's the question this entire story has been asking since 2013, and nobody, not Harry, not a palace lawyer, not $160 million in media contracts, has answered it yet.